There's a quote from Eckhart Tolle that I read just the other day, but I absolutely love it. And I'm just paraphrasing. He says something like, the best indicator of your spiritual progress is how you deal with life's challenges. Hey there, so today I wanted to talk a bit about the differences between being a layperson and being a monastic, and why being a layperson might actually be better for your spiritual life. And I discovered this stuff by visiting a monastery myself that I only discovered a few months ago. It's actually really close to where I live. I went and stayed there for a weekend, and though you're not interacting with the monks too much, you get a very good glimpse into what their life is like, and you kind of live like a monk for the weekend, because like a tourist monk, because you follow the same routine, you have to take the same precepts, you eat at the same time as they do, you do meditation at the same time as they do, at least in a group setting. And so it gives you kind of a window into what it's like. And to me it was very insightful, and I want to share some of the insights that I gained from it. I guess when I started doing meditation nearly 10 years ago now, I kind of idealised the life of a monastic. And some experiences I had on retreat in those years tended to sort of confirm that, what encouraged me to want to become a monastic and to live that kind of life. But actually this recent visit has really sort of shown me the opposite side, and I think it's very interesting. I guess what I thought naively when I was a beginner meditator was that being a monastic meant you were going to be peaceful all the time, and it meant that you were guaranteed to be enlightened, and that you had to, if you went there, you were some sort of advanced person, and that being a monk meant having like a perfect life where you could just dedicate to being spiritual all the time. And what I've kind of found is that being a monk can actually be a bit of a trap. Now, listen, a lot of the great teachers, historically and in the present day, have been monks at one point or another. And I'd say that to some degree that's contributed to the depth of their spiritual understanding. But I went to a monastery in the Theravadan tradition, which is kind of the tradition that is closest to the original Buddha's teachings, and it tends to encourage renunciation. So things like chastity, things like giving up, financial ambition and so on. And monks shave their head and they live a very structured life. They live a very frugal life, and they have minimal clothes, minimal possessions and so on. And they're confined to the monastery. They can't go out without permission, and they're very shut off from the outside world. They live separately, not all of them, but a lot of them live sort of in little dwellings dotted around the entire estate. And I guess what struck me was that they live a very imbalanced life. They live a very artificial life, but not in a good way. They live a life where they're not really engaged with what it actually means to be alive in the 21st century, to be a human in the 21st century with like a family and a job and the need to manage your finances and a social life and hobbies and so on. And what struck me was that they're not really getting the opportunity that brings you for spiritual growth. There's a quote from Eckhart Tolle that I read just the other day, but I absolutely love it. And I'm just paraphrasing. He says something like, the best indicator of your spiritual progress is how you deal with life's challenges. And to me, the monastics I was coming into contact with weren't really exposed to life's challenges. It's almost as if they were removed far removed from them, so that they could develop their spiritual life, as though the spiritual life were separate and a kind of something that needed to be very closely protected and nurtured, like a fragile little child, for example. And I just think that we don't need to do this. We don't need to separate so much. And actually, as lay people, we have the perfect laboratory for spiritual growth. With our family and our friends and our job and so on, we have exposure to everyday problems that trigger us. They trigger our past, they trigger our patterns, our mental patterns, our emotional patterns. They take us out of who we really are and into the dream of samsara, as the Buddhists would call it. They take us into the dream, into identification with our body and mind. And so being constantly exposed to this stuff, you could see it as a downside, but you could see it as actually the best opportunity you have for spiritual growth. And until I went on this weekend stay, I don't think I've really realised that. I kind of thought, right, I need to renounce the world, and I need to lock myself away, and I need to, cultivate my spiritual life as much as possible, and then I'll go back into the world. And I don't think it's actually like that. In the past few years, I've not been like that. That was more when I was a beginner. But this trip really showed me that. And it's funny because I've been practicing a type of Buddhism that is very much about that. And that people often say that it's the type of Buddhism we need in the 21st century. I'd also say that the way that society works now is that it's kind of getting harder for people to become monks and to dedicate entire chunks of their life to their spiritual practice. Obviously, it depends on your intention and it depends on how dedicated you are to it. But I feel that more and more things like online classes are more important. Things like doing meditation during your daily activities is really important. Things like using all life's problems and opportunities and everything in between as grist for the mill, rather than renouncing the world and becoming this monk that isn't engaged with the world in any way. I think this is becoming more and more relevant as time goes on, as people have less time, and as, for example, women a lot more women are working full time now and pursuing a career, which gives everyone a bit less time to do hobbies and whatnot. I think this is really important. I guess I also saw that monks there in a certain way, and I'm going to say this without trying to be judgmental or to sound horrible, but I need to say it as I saw it as well. I saw that they were kind of dead in a way. And you might think, oh well, monks should be more alive than the rest of us. That's not what I saw. I saw that they'd lost their character. They'd lost their personality. And not in a good way, I don't think. Not in the spiritual way of transcending the personality, but just losing their humanness in a very real way. Like losing their enjoyment of life and losing their, like the jokey side of it, the playful side of it, and just being so serious and stuck in this one track of Buddhism and enlightenment. And to me that is not very Buddhist, it's not very spiritual at all. The models of spiritual growth and of human growth that I've studied do not ask us to renounce our personality, to renounce the world, and to become robots. They ask us to more fully live them, but transcend them, but include them as much as we can as well. It's to see that this isn't who we really are, this personality, but at the same time it's our vehicle in the world. And at the same time, life is spontaneous, life is playful. It's not all about being serious and rigid all the time. And it's about refining this personality so that we can better bring our spiritual wisdom into the world and help others in their own path. And I just don't know if living that secluded life, the artificial life, the cloistered life, where you're not allowed to have sex, not allowed to use money and so on, I don't know if that is what we need. And I don't think that that is ultimately very helpful as a spiritual path. So to summarise, I just want to say that if you are a spiritual seeker, and you are shooting generally for a spiritual transformation, that you don't need to go to the monastery. I would suggest you do that now and then, going on retreats once a year, which I struggle to do, I have to be honest, and to have a daily practice as a kind of monastery within where you live, but also on a deeper level to bring the monastery to your life, to see your life as the monastery. Not that you have to like shave your head and do chastity and so on, but to see every life situation, even down to like minuscule levels, to see that as your spiritual vehicle, your path for transformation. Not to see it, that you need to become a bald monk to pursue that kind of life and to pursue that kind of depth. I think that's what we need, and I think that the many students that I teach simply cannot become monastics, and they probably never will be able to become monastics. And this is the kind of thing I encourage them to do. In fact, in all the classes I teach, and I teach this on my online courses as well, and in my coaching, I teach sitting meditation. We want that. We want that refuge. We want that intense form of meditation that has us become very naked with ourselves. We want that, but we also want to bring it into our daily life. So we practice standing and walking meditation too. And I encourage people all the time to customize the meditation to themselves, to bring it into their life situations as they need to bring the very specific practices they need for their specific life situations, so that they start to transmute these life situations which seem like a problem into their spiritual practice. And this gives you an unending amount of fuel for your spiritual life. That's the approach I take, and that's what I think is necessary, and that's what I'd encourage all spiritual folk out there to do. Alright, I hope this has been insightful for you. If you want to, you can check out my 8-week meditation course, and you can also inquire about one-to-one meditation coaching as well. It's very powerful, and you'll learn how to bring this stuff into your life in the most optimal way. Do subscribe if you like what I do, and stick around. There's a lot more coming, I can promise you that. Take care.